Joe presents TKO, together with 32 Red.
Welcome to TKO on Joe, together with 32 Red. We're a podcast and YouTube show with you every Thursday. Trackies and trainers with no socks for me today, because we've just come from a big shoot for Stand Up to Cancer with Graham Swan, John Walters, yourself. Good day, wasn't it?
Great day. I don't have tracksuit and trainers on.
Well, no, I took the hit for you on the last challenge.
Dressed for the occasion.
Do keep out for that content across Joe over the next month. Support, like and share, and of course give whatever you can. It's an important cause, and it was a great day. So on to TKO this week. Very pleased to have Andy Clarke, Sky Sports commentator, back with us. The last time we saw you was in the build-up to Joshua Ruiz in New York. You came on with Matt Macklin. Of course, you guys have got your own podcast as well. That, of course, went badly for Joshua. We're here to talk about Tyson Fury this week because, of course, he's had a series of sort of rebuild fights in between one or two slightly bigger ones. Nearly all went very wrong for him on Saturday, didn't it?
It did. The cut changed everything, as a cut like that's always going to. And when the fight was made, Otto Wallin got roundly slaughtered on social media purely because most people hadn't heard of him. But if you hadn't heard of someone, it means you've never seen them. And if you've never seen them, you can't possibly know how good they are. So I couldn't really understand that. But that's logic, which generally doesn't apply to social media anyway.
Yeah, because we were joking, because obviously you and I both worked on the comms desk for the Sauerland, so we've been out and seen some of these obscure sort of Eastern European and Scandinavian fighters. We're lucky enough to have both actually seen him and seen him spar Joshua as well, and knew he was actually a lot better than he was probably given credit for. And of course, you can't discount the added. What did you know?
I didn't know him, and I was asked the question actually literally a few hours before the fight on another show, a BT show, at your call, and my answer was, I don't know a lot about this guy. I don't think a lot of other people do. I can't really judge him, but my impression was it was just another fight for Fury before the Wilder fight. But obviously he was a lot better even than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, but that's a totally fair response. That's the kind of sensible response if you haven't heard of someone. I don't expect everybody to have heard of everybody, but just to write someone off on the basis that you haven't seen them is just, it doesn't make any sense at all. I didn't expect him to beat Tyson Fury, but I just knew he was a lot better than Tom Schwartz. But having said that, I thought it was going to be exactly what you just said it would be, which is a little ramp up before the fight with Wilder. And maybe it would have been that if he didn't get cut, but as soon as he got cut, it just changes everything for two reasons, doesn't it? Because firstly, it was really bad, and there's the blood in the eye and the discomfort and the mild panic, even for someone as experienced as him. And secondly, because it was a punch. If it's a head clash, then you get through 4 rounds and then you look to get it stopped as quick as you can, don't you, and get out of there. But because it's a punch, if it gets stopped, you're going to lose. And that would have been a total disaster for him, for Top Rank, for Bob Arum, for everybody involved in the whole thing, basically.
Yeah. Of course, financially, a lot invested in him from their point of view, and they were actually quite instrumental in getting that information across to Ben Davison. So obviously, the cut was the cause of a little short left hook when they were close up in the corner. According to Ben Davison, Tony Weeks had told him that it was a clash ahead, so they assumed that we'll just get through 2 or 3 rounds on the cards, go to the cards, and it'll be ruled a no contest, and we'll carry on as normal. However, due to this WBC replay review thing that they have in place sometimes, they realised that it was a punch, and Davison didn't know, the ESPN commentary team did, and they sent one of their reporters to interview Ben and essentially pass that information to him. Now, if you've been in that situation, let's say hypothetically you're at the Sky desk, when Adam Smith calls the main fights, you sometimes do kind of scorecards, and they come to you every 3 or 4 rounds. If Adam had said to you, listen, Joshua's cut, they think it's a headbutt, need you to go and tell him, would you be okay with that?
In that situation, yeah. Because they need to know, and they should have known, because if the WBC have decided via their instant replay that it's a punch, then the referee should be told it's a punch, and the referee then, I'm sure, would have told Ben Davison that actually it wasn't a head clash, it was a punch. It's essential information that they should have. So no,
did Tony Weeks know it was a punch? Well, obviously he didn't when he told Ben Davison it was a clash of heads, but by the time ESPN told Ben Davison, did Weeks know that it was actually a punch?
I'm not sure. I guess that's what his interpretation of it was, and I guess he must have got that wrong, not knowing, or maybe he hadn't spoken to somebody from the commission.
I wouldn't have thought he had. I'd have thought he would have made that decision himself. Yeah. But then once they've watched it, like you say, they should tell him, of course, because he would then realise I told Ben Davison this and it's wrong, and then he would go and correct it. I mean, it's like any kind of technology. It's all in the use and the application. It's great in theory, but if you don't if you don't get the fine details right, then it can be chaos.
Let's just rewind quickly to the Edwards-Martinez fight three or 4 weeks ago now. So you had a chat with the WBC at that point, and they didn't have in play or any plans to have any live replay for usage in that fight. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The WBC is slightly different to other governing bodies in various ways, and two of the things that they like to do, but they don't always, are video replay and open scoring. And whether they do or they don't generally tends to come down to where they are. So if the Commission doesn't want it or the British Boxing Board of Control doesn't want it, then they won't do it. So I spoke to Dwayne Ford, who was a WBC guy, and Charlie Giles before the fight, and they said, no video replay, no open scoring. And that was what I was expecting, because we never have it. And there's one other rule which is slightly different, which I won't get into. But they also have a section in their rules and regulations, a kind of override button that basically says that WBC can basically do whatever they want in any given situation to serve the best interests of boxing, or what they feel are the best interests of boxing. So that's what Suleiman did. So he was ringside. There was no screen ringside designated for the instant replay, but there's a big one above the ring, and he's the main man, and he watched it and he did what he did.
I was completely unsure of that rule. Like I didn't know what was going on. Obviously, we seen looking at the screens that it was an illegal blow when Charlie was on the ground. But the referee stopped the fight in favour of the Mexican kid and said that you've won by KO. And then Suleiman gets into the ring and actually changes the decision.
WWF, wasn't it? Almost?
And it was kind of like, I was taken aback. I was sitting, what is going on? Is this allowed to happen? But it turns out that it is allowed to happen.
It's like so many things in boxing. It doesn't matter how long you're around it. Things happen that you just have to try and piece together. You know, I study the rules and regulations, I reckon, as closely as anybody.
Yeah, you're my go-to, yeah.
But you just don't, something happens and you think, right, what just happened there? And Martinez couldn't really understand it. And it was when they didn't give him the belt that you kind of realised that something was going on. I mean, it was definitely late, and you couldn't argue that he couldn't have pulled that punch. I don't know why he did it, because he had Charlie was bang in trouble. There was a long way to go in that fight, and at that point you would have predicted that he was going to win that fight. But he just lost it, and you know. Yeah,
because you can argue it both ways. He sort of threw it away for himself, because
he did.
You know, they've accused a couple of the GB lads of hitting guys on the way down, but that's very different. Edwards was clearly already on his knee, and he had to step round him and line up.
Yeah,
you know, he had a wide open shot, and Edwards was quite clearly been down for a good second and a half. And when you're wide open like that and it ends a fight, well, you have no choice really but to say, well, yes, you may have won the fight, but actually you've now blown it for yourself.
Like it wasn't like it was knee touchdown and then a shot like instantly. There was a bit of
there was a gap.
There was a gap.
Oh,
like the referee's got it way wrong, like massively wrong. That shouldn't even.
I think
the
what
situation
happened.
shouldn't even occur.
No, you're absolutely right. I think what happened though was the fact that it was so late is what did the referee, because Mark Lyson was the ref, and I watched it back the next day, and you could see you could kind of see what happened. So he put him down. Charlie Edwards went to a knee. It was a conscious decision. He was hurt, but he went to a knee. At that point, as soon as a fighter goes down, the referee's got to start thinking about a few different things. One is getting the other fighter to the furthest neutral corner. Yeah. The other is getting himself into a position where he can see the fighter who's down and the fighter in the furthest neutral corner, and then pick up the count of the timekeeper. Yeah. So you want to be able to see all of them, really. So as soon as he touched the knee down, he started to do that, and he kind of stepped behind Charlie Edwards, and he missed the late. He didn't miss it. He saw it, but he was on the blind side of it, and he didn't think it was that bad. As soon as it landed, he kind of half turned. That was just the way his feet took him. So what he missed was Edwards kind of having a little writhe on the floor in agony. By the time he turned round again, he was just back on his knees again, and he looked all right. So I think what he did was he just thought, I've seen it, but it's not that bad. He'll beat the count. He took the knee, but he didn't. I think he thought that Edwards would beat the count, and then he would have taken a point because he did see it. But then he got to 10, and you could see Mark Lyson's face. He was just like, oh, God. Yeah, when he saw it on the replay screen, he was gutted.
A lot of pressure on referees, and they seem to be under as much scrutiny as ever these days. I mean, we were talking about Tony Weeks at the weekend. You know, when that cut opened and it got worse and worse and worse, a lot of people, certainly on social media, the fallout this week has been, well, you should have stopped the fight. And had it been Otto Wallin in that position and he was cut and required that many stitches, it would have been stopped in round 3 or 4. Same with Michael Griffin in the Joshua fight in round 3 when he was put down twice. That second one, I remember him getting to his feet and looking at him. We were, you and I was close as anybody to that, and he looked done. Like he wouldn't have begrudged the ref for waving it off then. But you can see the cogs in the minds ticking of the referees, thinking, if I wave this off now, I'm blowing potentially hundreds of millions for the broadcasters, for the fighters, for the promoters. It must be a very difficult thing to be completely objective and make the right decision in that situation where you know as much as anybody what's at stake when you make that decision.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of things might race through your mind. But one thing I would say is that in America, you box in America plenty, referees generally tend to let things go on a bit longer than they do here. They will give you, incorrectly or correctly, more of a chance. I mean, you've seen some fights continue over there when someone looks in real trouble. And what the reason for that necessarily is, it could be a mixture of the things that you just said, but also just their mentality I wouldn't describe our officials as squeamish. I don't think anyone who boxes is that squeamish, but you could say they are more squeamish than the US officials.
Okay. The other thing I think was of note of that Tyson Fury's performance, and Ben Davison has said this actually to kind of corroborate what certainly I saw, and I think a few other people did on Saturday, was even before the cut, he looked very flat and maybe suggesting he was overtrained or just putting in a little bit too much road work and actually just come in without the snap and the usual spring that we see. Now, he's never been a sort of guy that has overperformed against lesser opposition. He seems to raise his game when it really, really matters. So sometimes actually he doesn't look great against these sort of European and fringe world level guys, and actually looks $1 million when it's the Vladimir Klitschko's, the Deontay Wilders. But he did look flat, there's no doubt about it, those first couple of rounds. We were talking earlier, you were quite flat in the Scott Quigg fight. Yeah. Difficult when that happens on fight night.
Yeah, it was kind of, I was flat in that fight. Obviously I had my struggles to make 8 stone 10 or 122 pounds, and I was definitely tight at the weight, but I was flat in the fight. It was a fight that I won pretty convincingly, but I felt like I remember being tired in the fight and just flat, but in the last few rounds I got extremely tired. And I was winning rounds at the start by doing very little, so I was happy with that because of the condition that I was in. I remember coming back to a corner and Shane McGuigan, my trainer at the time, was saying, you're winning rounds, just keep doing what you're doing. If it's going to be boring, it's going to be boring. And that was the right advice in the end. But his tactics were strange as well, so who knows what way the fight may have played out if he had put the pressure on, knowing that I was a little bit flat. But it's just one of them things. I got through it, and it was, not lucky. I won the fight pretty convincingly, but I was glad I won it.
Because for Fury, of course, the argument is that had he started a bit sharper, established himself more, and his movement was a bit better, he probably wouldn't have got trapped in the corner as he did so early on and taken the punches that he did, which opened the cut. So the whole narrative with the fight, it's easy to say, well, the cut was what changed the narrative, but actually you can also say, well, what led up to the cut was also what changed.
Yeah. I mean, you can say any number of things really, and I think there's a massive temptation and a huge tendency for people to look at everything in light of confirmation bias, if you like. It's just kind of, you take what's happened and you try and work out, almost. And you work backwards, basically. Yeah. Joshua Ruiz was sort of, we always end up going back to that, but it was a classic example because he was really relaxed during the week. And we're all talking about how isn't it brilliant how relaxed he is on this stage. Then he loses and he's far too relaxed, and that's why he lost. If he'd won, then that would have been great still. With Fury, I think maybe he did look not quite as he does normally, but I don't know. I think peaking for that exact moment for the bell, I mean, it must be very difficult.
A lot of that's to do with the opponent as well, and how he's performing, and it's fine, and it's okay to, although he won the fight, but to come out and say I was flat going into it, it's a wee bit of an excuse. I don't think it needs to be said. I don't think you have to say it, especially when you win a fight.
Because I mean, Boazzi was very flat 3 or 4 weeks ago against Ryan Ford. And
you told me that. I didn't hear that about Boazzi. You know what I mean? I didn't see any of the interviews afterwards, but I don't know if he's made it vocal and said that.
He hasn't said so much, but he was in the changing room as soon as he was hitting pads. I just went, I'm not sure what's happened here, but he's just not there. There was no snap. Sort of timing was off, and then in the fight you're in against a game opponent that sees you as a target and a big name to beat, and suddenly the gap that should be like this really narrows, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a bit more of a dogfight than you'd anticipated. You add in a couple of cuts, and suddenly you've got a very competitive fight.
Yeah, I think what you just said there is interesting because if you win a fight, then you don't need to say things like that, and I totally agree with that. But I think we've had a lot of fights recently where it's an open and shut case, they're going to win, and then it becomes about how well they win.
Yeah.
And that's not good, is it? Because you want to see competitive fights first and foremost. I understand that not everything is going to be a 50-50, Hagler-Hearns war or whatever, but at the same time, these mark time fights, I think people need to realise that they're not a good idea because Ruiz beat Anthony Joshua. Yeah. Wallin could very easily have beaten Fury if that fight had been stopped. Josh is slightly different because he's on the rise, but he doesn't need any more of those fights. And I know that Matchroom don't want any more of them for him. It's just kind of hard to get him the right guy. But they're not a good thing past a certain level.
But here's the problem though, because one of the criticisms levied at Joshua is that he's become a sort of 2 times a year fighter way too quickly. He's had 22, 23 fights, but he's fighting once, twice a year. And certainly Teddy Atlas was I remember one of the people that said he's become a 2 times a year fighter too quickly, and he needs to be having more regular fights. So you could argue it both ways. Yes, Fury's maybe boxing substandard opposition, Seferi and Pianetta and Wallin, but would you rather that, or would you rather be active?
Yeah, I suppose I don't know. There's a balance, isn't there?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it depends who you are as well, though. I think Fury's had this kind of comeback where he's lost a lot of weight. He's been training. It seems like he's just constantly been training. I don't think that after the Schwartz fight, I don't think he needed another fight before Wilder. I don't think he needed it. And Wilder's got another dangerous fight coming up himself with Ortiz here. So again, that could throw a cat amongst the pigeons. And the heavyweight scene, obviously with Joshua and Ruiz, it changed massively. If Fury had have lost with the cut, and if Wilder loses to Ortiz, then it's a completely different scene to what it was a year ago.
Do you know, it's also quite a worrying reflection of the current heavyweight scene that Deontay Wilder, given some of the life and death fights he's had with DeHalpas and Spilker and Ortiz, of course, that he's the most reliable and consistent champion in the heavyweight division at present of all the guys.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but you look at the way he fights, and I really do kind of love him because he just goes out there and just jumps on people. And well, funnily enough, the one time he didn't do that was against Tyson Fury. He showed Fury a lot of respect. I'm not totally sure he'll do the same thing next time round. I think he might have realised from the first fight that his best chance to beat Fury, if to beat anyone, is to just do what he normally does. It might mean he loses too, but his best chance of winning is just to do what he normally does.
There is so much pressure on Wilder going into this fight. I really believe it, and I hope that he can win for a couple of reasons, because it sets up the Fury fight, and also that Ortiz is a proven drugs cheat. So I hope that Wilder can do the business, but there's a lot of pressure on him, and there's still an uncertainty as to who wins that fight.
Okay, we'll come back to Andy and Carl just in a few moments' time. But right now, this week, the boys from House of Rugby are live.
So we've gone with Derek Chisora.
Can't spell his surname.
That is definitely not how you spell Chisora.
Chisora.
Is he trying to go?
Oi, big
How is
man.
it done? What's he doing?
There he is. Listen, Derek.
Derek, what are you? He's in bed.
Oh,
Why are you in bed?
Hey, you're live on our House of Rugby podcast. We've got 500 keynotes here. Ladies and gentlemen, Derek Chisora.
Oh, he's cutting off Derek Chisora. We should have got him back.
Okay, back here on TKO with Sky Sports commentator Andy Clarke and Carl, as always. Let's talk about John Fury's comments that came out after the fight. Of course, he couldn't travel to the States because of, obviously, he was in prison from 2011 to
That's
2015.
misdemeanors. Yeah, it affects a lot of people.
Misdemeanors is a kind way of putting it.
Yeah.
Martin Murray had the same thing, didn't he? So he couldn't travel, and obviously not an easy position, having to watch a fight like that with your own son, being at home when he was kind of at the driver's seat for all the way up to the British title in 2010. Do you think those comments about Tyson needing to clear out the whole camp and start again, including Ben Davis, that was a little bit harsh?
Yeah, I did. I think The journey that Ben Davison's been on is really, really interesting. And I hear him talk about it. I've never met him actually, but I hear him talk about it. And he understands the position he's in. Because when he first appeared in a corner, high-profile corner with Saunders against Akovov, poor performance from Saunders. And so Ben Davison, it was decided that he was rubbish.
I was one of the men that give him stick.
But it was fair enough.
I hadn't seen him at the time, and I remember thinking, I've since I've apologised on this show actually, not to him personally, but at the time I remember just thinking, because he just left Jimmy Tibbs, Billy Joe, and I remember thinking there needs to be more in this corner, like urgency. There was no urgency, and Billy Joe was blown, and Ben then since came out and said, look, Billy Joe wasn't fit, he wasn't in proper shape to kind of put the pressure on, and that's why I wasn't kind of pushing him out.
Yeah.
But he said subsequently to that, he knew that the criticism would be coming, and he didn't feel it was unfair. There were reasons.
Sometimes you know more than everyone
exactly.
else does.
This is very unfair, the criticism for Fury.
Yeah, I think so. And then, you go forward to the Fury-Wilder fight, he's helped to get all the weights off, they've had the comebacks, boxes so well against Wilder, and all of a sudden he's the best trainer in the world.
Yeah.
And now, on the basis of a performance which was largely dictated by a cut, which there's not a great deal your trainer can do about that, he's an idiot again. Yeah. And it's just how it is, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we both sort of waded in on Twitter about it, I think, in his defence this week, but it was, the sort of criticism that come his way. Somebody said to me, well, he's no Manny Stewart, is he? I said, well, Manny Stewart wasn't Manny Stewart at 28 years of age. He was after 40 years in the game, and you don't judge somebody until they've had at least a decent crack at the whip, and you can't give a guy that's, I don't know, he's a couple of years away from 30 at the very beginning of his career. Of course, you're not going to compare him to one of the greatest trainers of all time just because he's not. Doesn't mean he's not potentially going to be a really good trainer. No,
I think it's very difficult to judge trainers when they have fighters come to them who are already very good.
Right.
People say, well, Tyson Fury doesn't need a trainer. Everybody needs a trainer, but you need to tell Tyson Fury less than you might need to tell somebody else. And what you do tell him, he's probably going to be able to do it. So it's hard to know how good a trainer is in that degree. Do they get... It's man motivation a lot of the time, isn't it? You look at someone like Ferguson, and did he have some kind of secret to football that nobody else knew about formations and tactics? He didn't, did he? He was able to get those players to do what he wanted them to do. Massive names, week in, week out for 25 years. And most people can't do that.
Yeah. But the cut played such an important part in that fight. That's nothing to do with Ben Davison.
No.
And in the end, Tyson won the fight against a better opponent than a lot of people give him credit for, and I think it's really unfair for Ben to be getting criticised for that fight.
Producer Simon made a really good point just before the break and actually it was somebody on Twitter commented this as well. Said, he's no more than a fitness trainer, and he might have got the weight off Tyson, but that's not the be all and end all. But actually, point being that Tyson's the kind of guy that can go off the rails very, very easily. He's got that kind of Ricky Hatton syndrome where in between fights, if he hasn't got somebody that he respects and is almost accountable to keep that weight off, he could easily just put on 3 or 4 stone. And if Ben is the guy that's keeping him in shape and giving him, a bit of tactical help in the corner, that's a darn sight more than was being done from 3 years ago. And so you can't argue with his contribution to the comeback, because if it hadn't been for Ben Davison, his consistency and his presence in Tyson's corner, he could still be 30 stone and now at a point where he was totally beyond any sort of comeback.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fact. I was talking to Peter Fury a few weeks ago, Lomachenko-Campbell fight week, and I was asking him, was he surprised that he managed to come back, Tyson, and lose all the weight? And he said, the weight wasn't that big a thing. He said that he used to come back into camp at 26, 27 stone. That was pretty standard because he'd go off and eat and drink and do whatever. And he painted this vivid picture for us of, he'd get him over to camp and he'd be skipping in the yard out the back of the caravan with Peter Fury just sitting in a chair with a hose every now and again just spraying him down. And that's how they used to do it, just to get the weight off early on. But like you say, you've got to keep his head straight. Otherwise, he will just, he's very up and down, isn't he? And to keep him committed to that process for that amount of time, you've got to be a good communicator. You've got to know your man well, and that was not an easy thing to do. It's quite common now for people to say, "Oh, everybody who puts a towel over their shoulder calls themselves a trainer. They're all just S&C." And there's an element of truth to that sometimes, but not always.
Well, I can remember after the Donaire performance, and was that your first or second fight under Jamie?
Second.
Second, yeah. And a lot of people were saying best Frampton's ever looked. Jamie Moore's a superb trainer. And then you get an injury during the Warrington fight. As a result, underperform. He's boxing out of his skin. It's still a competitive contest. Yet suddenly, Jamie Moore's not the right man for Carl. He should have never left Shane. And it's just a never-ending back and forth, based only on your last performance.
Yeah, of course, and that's the way it's always going to be. It has been like that, and I don't think it's ever going to change. Especially these days, it just seems to be getting worse. But the trust I have in Jamie, I believe Jamie's a fantastic coach. The Warrington fight wasn't a great performance, but that was down to me. The tactics that I was meant to use in the fight, I was unable to use them because I got hit hard in the first round, and my kind of game plan, my own fault, went out the window. So you can't blame Jamie Moore on that, because I think if I had been able to carry out the tactics that I wanted, I still think I could win that fight, and I still believe that.
Back to Tyson, I do wonder though, Andy, 47 stitches reportedly, different layers in the eyebrow, of course the eyelid cut as well, how that's going to affect him going forwards, because that's not just going to heal, cleanly, you wouldn't think, given the size of it.
No, it's a lot of damage, and it'll take time. I think they will get that fight made between him and Wilder, as long as Wilder comes through against Ortiz, although, as I understand it, that's supposed to be November the 23rd, but I don't think it's been officially confirmed yet. But we all expect it to be. I do think they'll get that together, and I still think that's just an absolutely fascinating fight. I mean, most people I speak to fancy Fury on the basis of, look how good he was last time after such a long time out. He'll be even better this time. I thought he boxed so well the first time that I'm not sure how much better than that you can really be. And I thought Wilder could have done things differently. Again, a lot of that's down to your opponent, but I think Wilder, I'd still make that. I don't know. I might slightly side with Wilder myself.
If you're Al Heyman and you've seen what's happened to Joshua, and you've seen what's happened to Tyson Fury with a cut, and you've got this proposed fight with Ortiz coming up, and it's not a definite confirmation.
And no one's really clamouring for it, are they? It's not like...
See, I made a mistake. I thought it was confirmed, the fight. Does Al Heyman and PBC maybe say, actually, we don't need this fight for Wilder? The Fury and Wilder fight is a much bigger fight, a lot more money's to be made. Let's give Ortiz a miss.
And knowing that the cut's potentially a point of vulnerability for him now.
Do you wait? I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know the situation. I thought that fight was confirmed, but now that it's not, I wouldn't be surprised if the fight doesn't happen.
Interesting.
I mean, I heard a date. I heard that it was going to be November the 23rd, but as far as I know at the moment, I'm actually suspended from Twitter at the minute, hilariously. So I can't check these things as much as I...
said?
Well,
whoa, it takes a lot these days to get suspended.
So what happened? What happened was we.
Can I just clarify? I've had a guy recently threatening to kill me on Twitter and my family, and he's a bit of a screwball. And
he didn't get suspended.
He hasn't been suspended.
Well, so go on then, Andy. What's happened, mate?
Must have been worse.
What happened was, what happened was, me and Matt Glynn, did a podcast with Alce yesterday the other week. I think you saw us actually. We were in the Intercontinental underneath the stairs on fight day.
Do you know Alce, by the way, Carl?
I've met him. Was it you that introduced me to him?
Yeah.
Someone did. Yeah.
He's a hell of a character.
Oh, he's a top bloke. Yeah. He's a top bloke.
Is that out at the moment, that podcast?
Yeah, it's out this week. And he's a really interesting guy. Sort of fled the Soviet Union when it collapsed in the early 90s, came to England, and then via a music career got into boxing. And now he's pretty influential. But he's great fun. He's really positive. And he came on and just told us loads of good stuff. And he was describing how Maris Breedis knocked out Manuel Char, and he said something like, it was like, I won't do the accent, but it was like watching a boar getting shot in The Hunting or something like that. And it was we made a little promo out of it. And I put it up last night. I put it up a few times already, but I put it up last night, and I immediately got an email from Twitter saying that I was in violation of Twitter rules. I think somebody must have complained, but they said I was in violation of Twitter rules for depicting the event of an individual's death or something like that.
God.
And I can either delete it or I can appeal. And I was just about to delete it, and my wife said, "You can't delete that. That's accepting that you've done something wrong. That's accepting their censorship."
Given the excuse my French, the shit that's on Twitter every day.
I know.
That's the least offensive
I know.
thing,
So I've appealed it anyway, and I'm just kind of revelling in my status as an anarchist at the minute. So. There's been dark forces at work the last few days, and my Wi-Fi was very patchy. I couldn't upload the podcast, so we suspect Given Raul's background, we suspect that it's Putin. That's what we're thinking. It's Russian interference. It's got it written all over it.
Do you know what? I'm going to tell Al that. I absolutely love Al.
Oh, Al knows. He called me today.
He's great. Al's absolutely brilliant. So that one's out this week. Yeah, do check it out on Macklin's Take, isn't it? Is it on iTunes?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's on iTunes, yeah.
Quick word on you this week. So there was talk of a fight with Isaac Dogbay. And I know it was like, there was loads of chat all of a sudden on social media. Frampton's done, it's this date, it's in California. And I rang Carl and said, I didn't know about this. And he went, well, neither did I.
Well, that's a good example of what you were just talking about with Ortiz Wilder. That fight's apparently made months ago. And I saw that on Twitter and all the details were there. And I just thought, oh, that's an interesting fight. I was going to ask you about it.
Yeah, well, literally the fight was mentioned to me, I can't remember the exact day, but say it was a Wednesday. I remember I was bringing my daughter dancing. So when did she go dancing? She goes dancing on a Wednesday. And it was literally just before I left the house, so about 5 o'clock, 5:30. So it was mentioned to me, potential opponent. Dogbo was one of them. There was another couple. I'll not say their names. But so that was a Wednesday evening at 5 o'clock. I hadn't even said to Christine, my wife. I hadn't said to my dad because it was kind of just like mentioned. I was like, well, okay, I'm happy for these fights if they can be made. The next day on Twitter, like 8 a.m. in the morning, Frampton to fight Dogbo in LA on the 30th of November.
It was on BBC Sport.
Whoa,
how are they finding
What is happening here? What's going on here? Honestly, and when people are phoning me, ask me, is this true? I'm like,
I don't know.
I haven't a clue.
Yeah. It's
still
funny
the same.
now as well. The fight gets announced later and later now too, don't they? Like sometimes we'll know that a card's happening, but then it won't get announced till like 3 or 4 weeks out. It seems to be. I mean, that would have been a reasonable lead time, I guess, if it was happening.
Yeah, do you know what? It may well be a fight, and it may well be my next fight. But tomorrow, I have to see a specialist about my hand, so I'll know more about that and how it's coming along then. But at this point in time, it's a fight that I would be interested in. But is it happening?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, fine. How is the hand feeling?
It's feeling better.
Good.
I've started doing some light punching, hitting paddles and stuff. And probably early, a bit too early. If please don't tell the specialist who's looking after me that I've been doing that.
Well, it's fine. This only goes out to how many thousand people every week.
But he says wait until the 18th, which is tomorrow, to come and have another X-ray and he'll have another look at it just to see if it's okay. But it still doesn't feel 100%, but it's getting better every day. And I have been hitting paddles and stuff, and it's been fine. So.
I couldn't quite believe it when I heard about that. I know you've talked about this a lot now, but it is just absolutely incredible. That
I was speaking
absolutely
to
incredible.
Bob Arum says he's never heard anything like it in sport, and we all know how long he's been
53
around.
years,
and it's like,
Although I was talking to someone the other day, we were having a similar conversation to one we're having here about how kind of harshly people are judged now. And I was saying, I bet there's some guy on Twitter out there who basically just says how unprofessional it was at Frampton not to have someone in his team whose job it was to catch falling ornaments. You know, because this is. I bet
you
you
look hard enough, it'll be out there.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. It will be. It's unprofessional. Imagine sitting with an ornament on your blind side. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think it was quite lucky that we were out there actually, because it just helped at least for people to see.
Yeah.
That there was
Well,
no
I've got.
nonsense.
So there's a guy called Tom Magnus who they've done a documentary on me before, and they're still continuing to record stuff about my life and around fights. So that's for the DVD at some point.
Keep that for the offcuts.
But Tom was there. He didn't see that happening, but he's got a lot of the aftermath, and any of the non-believers, it's mad. Like, you know, I'm just what. If I was going to make up a story, that is the maddest story you could have made up, surely.
We speak intermittently on the phone every couple of weeks, so sort of a debrief on boxing, particularly it's been a big weekend. The number of times that we've read on social media about the conspiracies that go on, and that people think there are sort of some back rooms where everyone gets together and decides on results and outcomes.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. Please believe us, it doesn't happen.
Mark Kriegel from ESPN, pretty much interrogated me on camera. So you weren't drinking? No, it was 5 days before the fight. I was drinking water. I just started water loading actually, so I was drinking lots of water.
I think Mark Kriegel likes to make everything into a film.
Yeah,
I do
right.
quite enjoy his sit downs and in his articles. But we did fighter meetings before Lomachenko Campbell with ESPN. So it's him, Andre Ward, and Tim Bradley. And I'm not knocking him. He goes about his business the way he goes about it. But I think he was asking one of the fighters. I think it was Luke Campbell about, going to the ring against Jorge Linares, your father had died recently, the images in your mind, and Luke was just like, yeah, I wasn't thinking about that. I was just
trying to think about.
But they do. I think in America, I don't want to.
Trying to put words in your mouth.
Yeah,
narrative's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah. They are brilliant at kind of mythologising sport. You look at ESPN 30 for 30 and stuff like that. Yeah. They do a brilliant job of kind of making folklore out of sometimes stories that are just not that extraordinary. And I think that's one of the differences between UK media and US media, to be honest.
Yeah, you're right. So just to confirm, no fight date set in stone for Isaac Dogboe yet?
Not definite. It's not confirmed, but it could well be that date. But I wouldn't be, if you're going to go out and go to a fight, I wouldn't be booking any flights yet.
If you were to tell anyone exclusively, where would you do it?
Probably my Sunday Life column.
I was thinking something outside the newspaper, but whatever. So it's good to know where your loyalties lie anyway. So held the fort for 6 weeks while I was away, absolutely nothing in return. MTK Golden Contracts was announced 3 or 4 weeks ago, and even more recently announced that it's going to be on Sky Sports. Good news for you, of course, and of course your teammate Stevie Ward's on there in the light heavyweight, and the featherweight tournament looks brilliant. Thoughts on it?
I think it's a great format. It's like an upmarket prize fighter, if you wish. Well, it's given these guys a chance. We've seen it before in this sort of format. Obviously, the Super Series. What do you call the one? Fratch and Ward?
Super
Six as well. So similar format to that. But these guys, obviously, they're guys that don't have that platform as Fratch and Ward and the likes. But it will give them the platform. So the money in the tournament is actually decent, pretty good, and it'll be more than they've been earning.
What sort of figures are they talking about roughly?
I think if you win, and you get knockout bonuses and stuff, so if you win from start to finish your 3 fights, I think you could be doing over like 100k. But at the end of it, there's a 5-fight 2-year deal with an American promoter who we're all guessing is Top Rank, because he worked closely with MTK, and I think it's guaranteed 6-figure minimum purses. Really good. So it's real life changing for these guys. Some of these guys may have been on, may not have got a 10 grand purse yet. So to go from that to that, it's huge.
It really is. Well, of course, Stevie Ward, it was his sort of career-defining performance so far against Liam Conroy a few months ago.
He's in it too.
They're both in it, yeah. Bob Adjusaf's in it as well, and Jose Burton. Would he be the favourite for you? He's been inactive though.
Yeah, that's the big problem for Jose. I think he's a really good fighter, but I saw him at the gym in Bolton probably about 2 months ago, and he gave us a very interesting sort of unguarded interview where he just said Frank Babiglione has just ruined my career because he beat me. Yeah, fair dues, that happened.
At the death. Yeah.
And since then, I just haven't been able to get any kind of fight. I mean, he was paired with Yard, wasn't he? With a pair of eliminators made, and Yard didn't want that. And then I think he was hoping that he would be in that mandatory position or get a final eliminator, and Craig Richards got it against Andre Sterling. So he just hasn't been able to get anything going at all.
All I would say is he was offered a very, very generous pay packet to fight Boazzi, and they did turn it down. And they had plenty of time, and there was all sort of notice given, but Gallagher decided they were going in another direction, and maybe they didn't deem it was enough to derail his career any further. I don't know what their thoughts were, but they were given the option of that, and it was very good money. I won't disclose what it was because it's not my place to, but it was more money than they probably should have been offered.
But he's a good fighter, Isaiah.
He is, yeah.
But it's pretty open now, I would say. That was a massive win for Stephen Ward. Huge win. Conroy,
fantastic fight as well.
Did himself a lot of credit in that fight, and Adjusaf is a really good fighter.
Dangerous. He's old, but he's a puncher.
Yeah, he's been at a good level. And the featherweight tournament's good. I mean, that's on October the 4th. That's our first one. I was looking at it yesterday. Know plenty about Ryan Walsh and Lee Wood. I think they were.
Jazza Dickens in.
Jazza Dickens is in it too. Walsh and Wood were going to be put together by the board anyway for the British title before this happened. But Davey Oliver-Joyce, who you'll know well, Tyrone McCulley, you'll know well too. Yeah. They are two really good fighters, very good amateurs.
It's a hard one to call that.
Yeah, one's from Mullingar. Joyce is from Mullingar, isn't he? And he's from Derry, isn't he? Tyrone, I think. But he boxed in Belfast, didn't he, at the Holy Family, I think.
So his club is Holy Family. I think he's now in Glasgow with
Danny Vaughan.
With Danny Vaughan, but he did base himself in Belfast for a while. At the start of his pro career, well, definitely at the end of his amateur career, I think he had a few pro fights with Jerry Stewart as well.
And then there's Carlos Ramos, who's an EU champion, good record. There's Mexican fighter Carlos Araujo, who's got a good record, and another kid called Soqueiras, who's WBA number 7, I think.
Cuban?
He is, yeah, that's right. He's 22 wins, 3 draws. So, It'll be really interesting, and they're going to do it with the 3 divisions. And in the featherweights, Walsh is British champion, so I'm assuming that title will be in the competition. Otherwise, he'll have to vacate it, and there's no way he'd want to vacate it. It's just he loves that thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Speaking of featherweights, Jordan Gill's in action back after that defeat a couple of months ago, but obviously Dave Cole was taking him out. Are you going to Italy this weekend?
It's on Thursday night, yeah. Me and Matt Macklin are
it's
covering
Thursday,
it.
of course
yeah,
it is.
it's
Sorry,
Thursday night.
So by the time this goes out, it'll
midweek.
be tonight.
Yeah, but I mean, it's important for him to get back in the swing. He'll win that fight. I think he's got Brian Morena, just good, solid Nicaraguan guy, and it was a tough one for him last time because he was ill. I believe that. No reason not to believe him. He didn't tell Dave Coldwell he would have pulled him if he'd known. And if ever there was a bill where your name is at the top of it, where you could have done that, that was it. Because Lee Wood was really the main event because it was in Nottingham and that's where he's from, and he sold a load of tickets. So I think he thought, I can't let people down. Actually, he could have done it. Well, he could have pulled out that day.
He said it was directly as a result of the backlash that Josh Kelly got after.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. But I think if he'd... Well, he would... it's hard. I mean, if he told Dave, then he would have known that Dave would have pulled him out. But Dave would have been able to explain to him why that actually would have been okay.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I think you got to give him credit for still going ahead with a fight even when he wasn't in the best condition. Maybe a naive and silly mistake, and it's something I'm sure he will have learned from. But you still have to give him.
I think he will have learned loads from it because even when he did box, he boxed the wrong fight. Like if he just tried to get through on points, he probably could still have won. But he had a bit of a tear up. No, I know. So that's just how this. It's the defeat, isn't it? It doesn't matter particularly in the grand scheme of things. He's still young, and we all want to see people lose this obsession with unbeaten records. I think.
I do think in the long run it could actually be something that ends up being beneficial to him. In that somebody like a rising star like Ryan Garcia, he's super featherweight really, but. He might take a Jordan Gill looking at his record and thinking, he's 20-1 and he's lost to this kind of fringe world level Mexican, and actually he's probably very beatable, not really knowing the circumstances that it was under. And actually, I think you chuck someone like Jordan in with him and he could get an absolute lesson. So it could unlock doors for him. We've talked before about how doors open for you when you lost because people suddenly think...
Well, a lot of doors open for me when I get dropped by Gonzalez in Texas. That made the Quigg fight, no doubt in my mind. That's why the Quigg fight happened, and that is why the Leo Santa Cruz fight happened, the featherweight as well. Absolutely no doubt in my mind.
So sometimes good things come out of
interesting things going on with Ryan Garcia because
aren't they?
Very interesting. His opponent pulled out on the weekend and he was off to another one in, Duno, and I felt a bit sorry for him in that situation because who is going to... It's fine for someone to say, and there was a ready-made replacement and he didn't fancy it, but who does in that situation?
But it's all getting a bit strange now. I think his latest one was a dig at Oscar because he said someone else was the best prospect.
Virgil Ortiz, And I think
he's probably right.
He's absolutely right. And I think
he's had a hissy fit, which is a little bit embarrassing.
Yeah, but it was compounded because Oscar said something like, he said, no, he's really been brought in because of his social media following. Has it completely transcended towards boxing? I'm not sure that it has. So maybe that was a little bit far, given that he'd had a bit of a bad weekend. Yeah. It's actually a shame. I was looking forward to that fight because Avery Sparrow, I've watched 2 or 3 of his. He's a Philadelphia fighter.
Yeah, he fought Henry Lundy, didn't he, on that Philly show with that Kate Taylor
good
show
fight,
in March.
Really good fight. And he's a good fighter. And actually, I don't think that would have been anywhere near as easy a night as Ryan Garcia thinks it would have been.
No.
But we didn't get to find out.
No, and like there often is in boxing, there was a kind of vague element of comedy about the whole thing. With kind of like officers searching town for Avery Sparrow. It's like, it shouldn't be that hard to find him. Like, there was a press conference.
He's weighing in at a certain location on a certain time.
He's going to be in the gym.
Madness. And lastly on the list, it wasn't on my agenda, but we may as well talk about it. Our boys are doing really well at the World Champs in Russia. Pat McCormack through today. Of course, by the time Thursday comes around, I don't know how many of them will still be in. Galao Yafai beat the Cuban, Yuspanivation, this morning.
I saw that's who he got. Yeah, that was a tough draw. That is a big win. That is a big win.
So looking good. I mean, of course, the Olympic qualifiers announced for London in, I think it's next March.
Yeah,
which is great for us to have home advantage. So.
Yeah, I could walk to the copper box from my house.
Can you?
So I'll go every day if I can.
Oh, still in Hackney, aren't you?
Yeah. No, Stratford.
Okay.
Stratford now.
Okay.
But yeah, the World Championships is just a brilliant competition. I went to the last one. I'm working on the semi-finals on Friday, off TV, not over there. And it's so hard to get medals in that competition.
Yeah.
Like, GB have done better in Olympics than they have in the World Championships. Ireland have done pretty well in both in recent times.
Yeah.
So Michael Conlon got a gold in 2015.
Katie was doing her thing as well.
And Kate
obviously.
Taylor as well. It's a rock hard
They
tournament.
are so difficult. Who's the lad
There's
that
a kid
beat
called
Grail?
Ian. Kurt Walker, fantastic
Serious.
Yeah,
Serious,
yeah.
player. He's still in. He beat a Colombian there. I'm not sure he fights in the next round, but I think he's fighting for a place in the last 8 now. But if you're beating Peter McGrail, I think it may be 2-1 to Walker now, maybe 2-2. I'm not sure, but they fought a few times. But Walker's won the last 2.
And McGrail's
McGrail's a very good fighter. So
Yeah.
if you're beating guys like Peter McGrail, you're not just an Olympic medal hope, but potential Olympic champion.
Be nice next year, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, McGrail was. I'm a big fan. I remember he just came through slightly too late for the last Olympic cycle. Kezashfak was a good fighter, and he earned that place, and he kept that place. But McGrail was right up his
was really tight, wasn't
backside.
it?
I mean, it was really, really close. And I just remember seeing him boxing, World Series boxing, first season as a senior.
Your call, I think.
And he had a string of really hard fights. Like he had like Ukraine, Kazakhstan. I saw him in the final against Rubesi Ramirez in Uzbekistan, and he got stopped in the second round, and he was really disappointed. And I was talking to him afterwards, and he said, "Oh, but look at Ramirez's record. You know, he doesn't really stop many people." And they just said the reason he doesn't stop people is because they don't try and win. Like you tried to win. You've had a handful of these fights, and you tried to win, and you took it to him, and you paid the price. But that's that says a lot about you. So, yeah, Pat McCormack, Big Fraser, they're very experienced now. Galal, like you say, is all of them. You know, it's
very good team.
But if you kind of see them progress through the rounds, and what generally happens is that they just fall. You know, Joyce got a bronze, didn't he? McGrail got a bronze last time. Fowler got a bronze the time before that. Joshua Campbell got silvers the time before that. It's just, I don't know what it is about it. Well, the world's best boxers are there, but they are in the Olympics too. But it's so hard to medal in that competition.
Yeah, it is. Well, good luck to all of them for the rest of the week, and we look forward to the qualifiers. We will try and catch up with some of those GB fighters as they get nearer to those tournaments next year.
Get the McCormacks.
Yeah, get the twins in. We're going to hopefully sit them down in a little group and have a chat with them, because
anything could happen.
They're a good bunch. Yeah, can't it just? Andy, mate, thanks very much for coming on. It'd be good to speak to you.
Yeah, it'd be great to come in.
Enjoy Thursday night in Italy. Carl, good to see you back, mate. Good luck with the hand scan. Hope it all goes well, and we'll see you next week. And thank you as well for watching TKO on Joe, together with 32 Red. Another episode done and dusted, and as always, we'll see you again in 7 days' time.
You've been watching TKO on Joe, together with 32 Red.